Going once, going twice, sold! You're listening to The Property Pod, an accessible and easy way to get into or help understand the goings-on of the property market. Join Aaron, John and Pat as they discuss all things real estate, most likely get sidetracked, and then try and rein it all back in as they present The Property Pod.
Alrighty, here we are with the first episode of the Property Pod. Thank you for downloading or streaming this wherever you are. My name's Aaron and I'll be hosting the show. I'm joined by two very special friends of mine. I'll throw over to John.
Good morning, gentlemen. The intro couldn't be more precise in relation to getting sidetracked and hoping to rein it all back in.
I thought that was essential with us. I thought we should let people know right off the bat exactly who we are and this is what we do.
Made writing the intro pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly.
So the other agent with us here is Patrick Berry. Tell us about yourself, Patrick.
Sure. I've been doing real estate since 2006. Obviously work for my own family business, 414 Real Estate. So pretty excited to sort of give back to the community with a bit of extra info. But for me, it's been a fun roller coaster ride doing real estate. It's definitely an interesting job, but I do love it.
So right off the bat, I guess it's important to know why are we doing this podcast? What's the purpose and what's the target audience? Who are we aiming to hit with this?
My position is very much the same as Pat. As it's a family business, been in the real estate game pretty much as long as each other. But one of the things I've noticed is how very little people understand. I'll often write up an offer and it's like, have someone walked you through this contract previously and said, never even looked at the words. And it's actually quite scary in some respects, in terms of the professionalism that gets applied when educating potential purchasers or sellers as well. But with this podcast, the way I saw it is that we catch up nearly every week, every fortnight and talk about these same topics. And I think it would be really fun just to actually put that into a podcast so that I can just download, I suppose, the information that we're getting, but also to just think openly to the rest of the market. Probably more so as a fun project for me, if anything.
I tried to figure it out. I think it was about 2016, early 2017, you and me started catching up with coffee every Thursday. So
that's it.
Yeah, it's been a few years now and obviously we talk a lot of smack when we catch up and we talk about our frustrations with real estate. But I thought, same as John, great opportunity just to start recording it, give the info out to the people. And if we get listeners, fantastic. If not, we're having the same fun we have every week.
We're still having the coffee in the morning every week.
So for context, I guess it's important to state that all three of us have been friends for many years, for countless years. I guess you guys go to primary school.
Kindergarten.
You've gone since way back when.
We both got the plaque to signify that we'd been to the same school for the entire length.
So yeah, you guys have gone through school the entire way. Now you've gone into real estate in separate businesses. We'll just clear that up. You guys work for different companies, so this isn't affiliated with a certain company. This is just a open forum for anyone to discuss anything.
Absolutely.
That's exactly right. John and I, we're open books, so we never hide anything of what we're doing.
Yep.
If anyone comes up to me on the street and says, what are you up to, where are you at? I'm happy to share info straight away, and I believe John's the same. I think it's important that the more info that gets shared, the better the industry expands as a whole.
Yeah, for sure.
Where before everyone used to keep their little secrets to themselves, created that mindset that everyone's out to get everyone in real estate. But I don't think that's the case anymore. I think everyone wants to help each other, and that's definitely what our motto is with me and John.
Yeah, and I think that openness and honesty is a good point, because someone might say, how's the market? Like, oh, best week ever. I'm the happiest I've ever been. And I'm thinking if someone asked me, that's not true.
Yeah.
You have ups and down days every day of the week, have great weeks, hard weeks. And also too, I mean, at least then if you're just completely open in the process and honest with yourself and to the consumer, like that's not a bad thing for our industry anyway. Because I think as agents, we actually have a hard time clawing back integrity for people.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're sort of coming from two steps backwards. So if you say you're a real estate agent, it's like, oh, no, go.
Oh, okay. Yep. I think we've had this conversation before, John, about kind of you wrestling with the idea of what it meant to be a real estate agent and just realising that eventually it was, if I just be myself, I'll succeed in this?
Yeah, 100%. I think when I first started, I was obviously looking for role models and then trying to step in their shoes and do it the way they do. But in every step of the way, I was learning lessons, but I was also uncomfortable in that space as well. I think people can sense that. Especially people in Hobart. If you're not real, you just get thrown out the door very quickly. The more I just settled into who I am, the more success came my way, because I just found people that wanted to work with me.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not about trying to being a person that appeases everyone. It's just, look, if I can do what you're looking for, great. not a bad way of putting it, but I think then that's why coming into this podcast as well, I sort of see it now that this is just a really Pat and I have been around for long enough now that it's just you're getting to just hear who we are.
Yeah, for sure.
Nothing more.
It's that transparency aspect and showing that we're genuine people. We haven't got a hidden agenda. We're not here to shift people's opinion on us. We're here to give our thoughts, our opinion on the marketplace. If you like it, great. If you don't, that's fine.
Yeah, it's probably wrong. Who knows?
Well, we get it out there and let it be known. I guess it's not like, has anyone seen that new Chris Lilly show with the lunatics on Netflix?
Oh, not yet. I saw
You haven't seen it? No. So I didn't love the show. He's had his hits and misses, but the real estate agent on the show, the character did with that one was kind of what you're describing. The stereotype of
drives the expensive car, wears the expensive suits, all about his hair and his style and his looks.
and he wants to be a DJ, so maybe he'll have a podcast as well.
Well, luckily enough, I can't spin decks to save myself, so that's a good thing.
But you're a mean drummer. I remember back in the day at school, you were quite good at drums.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You still play?
Oh no, I've been setting aside a little target for myself that I'll go get an electric drum kit, so then I can actually start up at home again. But the only problem is probably shocking at home because it's great for me because I'll have headphones on. I'll be in some 1980s stadium, playing
Just
with
rock
Poison.
out.
Oh, everyone else will heal. But that's just me living the dream.
No, you live it and you love it. Just for a little bit of extra context, I guess I didn't introduce myself properly. So, I've gone to school. I'm Aaron. I've gone to school with these two guys. So I joined later in life. I think high school we all crossed paths. We've kind of hit it off. We have always been interested in, I've always been interested in media production, but these guys have always assisted with me. So I work at 414 Media House. This is kind of the birth child of just wanting to learn more and do more. So we do video, we do 3D scanning, we do we do drone photography and
now we produce podcasts.
So yeah, just building the skill set. And
asked us a month and a half ago what we knew about podcasts. I think the answer was 0. But Google's an amazing thing. You can research the absolute hell out of something and get quite knowledgeable quite quickly.
Yeah, so we're working at it. This is kind of a floating format. Anything can happen. We're kind of just experimenting and seeing what happens, but we appreciate anyone out there listening.
Well, it's probably going to change each week with that in mind because we're still trying to figure out exactly what we want the show to be.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Things might get added, things might get removed. We're hoping to get a couple of special guests in to talk about things. So it'll be a revolving door, I guess, as to what this actually ends up being over time. But we'd love feedback. So by all means, let us know what you think and we can adapt to make it suit.
Yes, there'll be some growing pains throughout this, but yeah, hopefully we'll have some fun with it and see what happens and put it out there.
Yeah, I mean, I can say like I've got the first podcast jitters, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, you kind of we did some practice runs the other week, and the more we did it, the better we felt about it. But I think today I've got the nerves. I'm like, I really want to do well today.
I want to spray my mic gold. So this is mine over here, John. So don't come near it.
Don't mess with the golden mic. Well, we might move on to another section. Bear with us for one moment, and we will be right back.
414 Real Estate has been operating within the northern suburbs of Hobart since 2006. With their innovative approach to marketing and managing your property, they have all your property needs covered. Find out more by visiting them today at 414.com.au.
As a family-run business, First National Real Estate McGregor understands that the property market can be stressful. However, with a strong team in both sales and rentals, we are here to guide you through the property maze. Find out more today at mcgregorfn.com.
Alrighty, let's take a deep dive into this week's topic. With the federal election coming up on the weekend, we thought it would only be appropriate to bring up what that means for housing, for first-home buyers, and for all the election promises that have come out in the last week or two, which have been quite a lot. So I might throw it over to Patrick. He knows more about this than I do. So Pat, tell us about what each political party has offered.
Well, the main things that's come out in the last week or so is actually the first home buyers 5% deposit scheme. And although it was announced by Liberals, it's really good that Labor has actually seen this as a positive thing as well and honoured to back it as well. So regardless who gets in on the weekend, this is definitely going through. And it might not mean a huge amount for a lot of our listeners, but for the first-time buyers out there, it is a fantastic stepping stone to help them get into the market because it's actually going to allow people to be able to get in with only 5% deposit versus a 20% deposit, which I think is really good.
Oh, and that I suppose that enabling that to avoid mortgage lenders insurance as well, isn't it?
It's 80%, so that's the main thing. So instead of you needing to take out mortgage insurance, which I think is roughly anywhere between $5,000 to $10,000 depending on the loan, the government's basically taking up that other 15%, so you don't have to worry about the mortgage insurance side of things.
Yeah, that's really interesting because if you haven't got a loan before, mortgage lenders insurance isn't so much about protecting the buyer; it's actually about protecting the lender's interests. So it ends up just becoming that extra cost for those that haven't had the capacity or time even to be able to save for a larger deposit. So that idea that they could enter that market on almost an even competing field will make a huge difference, especially in our area.
Well, and banks have become a lot harder with lending at the moment after the Royal Commission. So this is a nice stepping stone to help purchasers get into the marketplace, especially those first-time buyers, which struggle as it is. Because you can imagine on the mainland, the average house is sort of $500,000. 20% of that is $100,000 you've got to have before you can actually buy a property. So
that's full on.
Yeah, it's hard to get into the marketplace, and this is definitely going to help. And I think what I like about it versus previous government schemes like the first-time buyers where they got $7,000 just paid to them for buying a home, this is really good because the government isn't actually having to hand out or fork out money straight away. They're just going guarantor basically for 15% of the property. So very rarely do people default, but the government is only going to have to pay out on the ones that do default on their loans. So the majority of people that do the right thing and just want to get into the housing market, it's a win-win for everybody because it's not going to cost the government anything, but at the same time, it's going to help first-time buyers get into the marketplace as well.
Yeah, for sure. So as a first-time buyer, say, what were you having to save for a deposit previously in comparison to what would you have to save?
So 20%, yeah. Different banks will lend different amounts and some are more generous than others, but the general rule of thumb was that you need to save about 20% to purchase a property. Now, there are banks out there that would lend based on 10% savings, but you had to do this mortgage insurance scheme,
lender's mortgage,
which cost a lot of money and another fee and another cost that a lot of first-time buyers didn't have and would make them extra time for them to actually save to be able to do it. So what the government's hoping with this is that it'll actually potentially shave 1 or 2 years of someone's saving pattern for them to be able to get into the marketplace, which is great for everyone.
Of course. So you're not spending as much time saving for your deposit because you're not having to get as large a deposit.
Yeah.
So,
and then you're not needing to get the mortgage insurance bill on top of that as well. So there's extra savings there. So it's a multiple savings sort of different areas, and it just helps first-time buyers get into the market quicker.
I think one of the thoughts, I haven't thought through this one through too much, but immediately the other counterpoint to that might be is that at the moment the banks, the purpose of the mortgage lenders insurance is obviously the banks are taking the risk on that individual's loan. What you could argue is that it might not be a smart idea that now the government's actually be going to taking on that risk. So it could play out the scenario where you've got an individual, a first-time buyer, who under normal circumstances wouldn't be able to get it because they would be perceived as too high risk, not enough money, not a high enough wage, for example.
Sure.
But the government's basically stepping in and saying, don't worry about it, we'll subsidise it for you instead to absorb that risk, which, the government's effectively the other taxpayers to benefit you. So whether or not that could actually create a distortion in the first-time buyers market, I don't know.
I guess time will tell.
Yeah. But it's just that because obviously the banks are going to be looking for profit, fair enough, but the government's going to be looking at it from a very different perspective. I'd be interested to see how that plays out in real time because now, like I said, the government's going to be taking on the risk, not the bank.
Yeah, so regardless what happens on Saturday, this won't come into play until the 1st of January next year. So I guess they've got a little bit of time to figure out exactly how it's going to work. It will be interesting what that does for the next 6 months for first-time buyers. Are they going to hold out from purchasing the property or to take advantage of this scheme, or are they not going to think it's valuable, so they'll just keep doing what they're doing now?
Well, I remember what happened in 2010 after they had, especially in Tassie, it affected where we went from a $7,000 bonus to the $14,000 for about 12 months? 12, 18 months, I suppose? I can't quite remember. But then the second that scheme finished, the volume of transactions, it just, plummeted quite dramatically, especially at the bottom end where most of the first-home buyers are in our market. And I think in large part what happened was you had all these people that were rushing in to buy, like probably 6 to 12 months ahead of their natural cycle or normal schedule because they had that bonus. And then all of a sudden that 6 months prior, 12 months prior, all those buyers were already gone because they bought 12 months earlier, if that makes sense. So it sort of inflated the market somewhat
Yep.
at the wrong period of time. So with this scheme, there might be a little bit different though, because they're not giving you money up front. It's just being able to
Guarantee.
Yeah. So it might not actually change the person's buying cycle.
Well, that's what I like about it. That giveaway of money aspect. You get that perception in the marketplace that all that does is get greedy vendors where they just put their property up by 14,000 or 7,000
Absolutely.
to cover it. Where there's no physical money changing hands. So theoretically, hopefully it does help. Hopefully it brings more first-time buyers. Apparently, first-time buyers only make up 17% of the total housing loans out there at the moment. So it's definitely a struggling area for a lot of people. So anything that helps get them up, I think, will be great.
Yeah, and I'd imagine friends that, in Victoria and the Sydney markets where, their median, closer to the city is still extraordinary, like close to $1 million. I've no idea how, I've obviously got an idea, but it'd be hard for an individual, especially or young couples, to save that initial element to get into that market.
Oh, it's crazy to even think in the market down here. Like, I recently became a first home buyer, and I'd been saving for, I guess, 2.5 years. I think I'd kept squirreling away everything I could, and to get enough for a deposit, and then looking into what I wanted to buy, it became really difficult. And luckily, me and my partner were kind of both in the same place and decided, this is something we're both interested in. So being able to put that together, we were able to get a deposit together and put it into action. But if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to do that if I hadn't had my partner too.
And it's even harder now with Hobart Marketplace and the rents being incredibly high and so much demand on that. A lot of people's wages are going just to weekly rent. So to be able to save money full stop in Hobart is a very challenging thing at the moment.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing. Like, absolutely. I was doing that, living on your mum's couch or living with your mum and paying very little rent, or paying rent by cooking and doing all the silly little things to squirrel away enough to become a homeowner. So I guess this sounds like it's a way of helping get into the market quicker, not have to save as much, and hopefully not cause financial strain by renting and saving at the same time.
Definitely.
We've got an alarm going off in the background.
It is, yeah. I think because this podcast is fire.
It's the fire alarm, but we will continue on for you.
I'm not sure what that is, but
this
anyway.
is fine. But the other one that little notes we had there too was the announcement to increase or to extend the two parts, which for the first home builders for the $20,000 on new homes, but also to the 15% discount on stamp duty for established homes as well. And I remember that benefited me a lot of years ago when I bought my first home. Any element that allows a first home buyer to just, because stamp duty is just a tax of like 3.5-4% on the purchase.
I was just about to say, even though I just said I bought a house, I couldn't tell you what stamp duty is. So could you? We mentioned earlier that this is what we're going to do. We're going to help people out who don't understand the things that are confusing. What is stamp duty?
I'll do my best. I might fumble through, but the way I look at it, it's simply a tax on purchase. So in terms of the cost of where you're going to be shifting from one title owner to another, basically that's the cost of stamp duty. What do you think, Pat?
Seems pretty straightforward to what I believe it is. So it's basically just a tax that's involved in purchasing a new property. It's just one of those things that forms part of buying a home.
Yeah.
With that, it's actually really good timing to bring in the next bit, I guess.
Yes, I think John was just mentioning something along the lines of the 50%.
Oh, I apologise. I had to go fix the fire alarm. So
I was careful to go for you, mate.
Ripper.
Just wanted to be like backdraft, get out there.
He's already ripped his shirt off. It's quite impressive.
Cool. So we've covered that.
Yeah,
awesome.
But we'll put some links in the show notes to have a bit more detailed explanation. But sometimes the simplest is the best.
It's good to see that is there for first-home buyers buying established homes, because it is a struggle, and being able to get those fees down, definitely that's extra money that can go to your deposit. So if you had to pay $10,000 for stamp duty and now all of a sudden you get 50% off, that's another $5,000 you can put towards your deposit, and that's a huge amount of money, when especially in our marketplace where the average house might be $330,000, $350,000 for a first home buyer. That's a huge amount of extra money towards putting down on a mortgage.
So is there something 100%. With this stamp duty business that if it's a already established home, it's worth a certain amount, and if you're freshly building, it's worth more? Or
so that's two different schemes, Aaron, but you're very close there. So well done. You've been listening.
Thank you very much.
I like it.
I'm a good listener.
So the other thing that was announced this week through the Tasmanian government was the First Home Owners Grant, or First Home Builders Boost. And that's a slightly different scheme. So if you buy an established home, you get the discount on stamp duty, which is fantastic. If you're buying a brand new property, and that can be a home that's never been lived in. So it can be a spec home where a builder's bought the land, built the property. or it can be where you buy a block of land and then you engage a builder to build the property on your behalf. You're actually entitled to what they call a first home builder's boost, which is actually $20,000. So there's a lot of incentives out there in the moment for brand new builds. Hobart is in a housing shortage at the moment, so government's doing everything they can to be able to get as many people to move into new homes as possible. So, and it keeps the building industry ticking over as well, which is great. So yeah, you get that extra $20,000 for a new home build. And that was just announced this week as well, that the Tasmanian government is going to continue that on for another 12 months till June 2020, which is great. So that's just another bonus that's out there for first-home buyers to help them get into the marketplace. So you will have to go to a little bit further out, your Brighton, your Sorrells, Kingston, Margate, those sort of areas. But if you're prepared to travel a little bit more, you can get a brand new home, get $20,000. That's a huge amount of equity straight into a property, and use it as a stepping stone. Maybe you live in one of these homes for 3 or 4 years, pay it down a bit, then sell up and move to a suburb that you're more desirable to live in, or something that you want to be closer to town, for instance. So I do a lot of these type of deals with first-home buyers in my marketplace, and a lot of them do exactly that. Their whole goal is to get to own, 30% of their home within sort of 5 or 6 years. So they can then use that either to remortgage to buy another property, or they can then sell that off and use that extra capital to put down on a more expensive home closer to town in sort of, your Moonas, Glenorchies, those sort of areas, or Newtowns, Lead Valleys. So it is a good option there as well. And it's just another way that the government is trying to do everything they can to help first home buyers get into that marketplace.
Yeah, the problem is that the word housing crisis gets thrown out a lot. And it's really only started to be prevalent in the Hobart market probably within 3 to 5 years max, because we'd actually seen an actual population increase for the first time in pretty much Tassie's history. All of a sudden, we've got enormous pressure on the lack of available property. And it's like you said before with rents. God, how much have they risen? 30, 50% over the last...
It's gone up a lot. It has gone up dramatically. I think that I read somewhere that we're about 3,500 homes short in Hobart alone for the demand that's here. So that's what's pushed rents up. But it is a bit of a perfect storm down here as well. Like you've got the Utahs expanding and getting a lot more international students coming in. You've got tourism booming down here, which has encouraged a lot of people that maybe travel to the mainland for work to come back because they like the lifestyle here. You've also got a lot of people that are no longer needing to leave. So instead of I know, for instance, you left as when you left school, and my mate Sam left. A lot of my friends from school travelled to the mainland for work because it wasn't here in Hobart, and now it is. So a lot of those people are starting to come back, and that's just putting all that extra pressure on the market and making this area just really demanded area, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's I tell this story when it goes to I have just so the perception that's changed in Tassie. When I first got into real estate, going to different conferences and learning, etc., I'd say, "Oh, you're from Tassie." It's like, "Oh, from Tassie. Oh, two heads." So basically, you just be the butt of all jokes.
Yeah, you're the backwards.
Yeah. Yep. So, but now I go to the same conference. I speak to essentially the same people, dressed the same, doing the same thing, and I go, "They're from Tassie." "Oh, Tassie. Oh, I've always wanted to go there." And I'm thinking, "No, you didn't. Now you do. Isn't that uncanny?"
You're not shy either, so you'd relay that straight to them.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You're like, "No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. We had this conversation 10 years ago.
I've got it in my notes.
Even before I could grow a beard." Okay, so go away.
Could this have anything to do with your brother's TV show?
Rosehaven.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I do like it when he comes down to Tassie because he's a walking celebrity. So I get to be the famous brother. And I've had it a couple of times at open homes where they forget who I am, but, "Oh, you're Luke's brother." So, yep, that'll do. So at least when I do a follow-up call, I can go, "Hey, it's Luke's brother." "Oh, Rosehaven."
Tell us a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that never works out well. My jokes are all bad.
It seems quite interesting that, again, so John's brother is Luke McGregor, stand-up comedian. He had the hit show Lukewarm Sex, which is currently available on Netflix. He's also into his third season, or maybe the third season's just finished.
Gone, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, third season's just finished of Rosehaven, which is a TV show about a guy who returns from the mainland to help run his family real estate agency in a small town called Rosehaven. Now, is this a bit of art representing life, John?
Well, there was I'm wary of our time, but one of the things that I liked in the first season is the line, and at the end of the series they go, "You're going to stay?" And he said, "I couldn't hack it." And I think that was a big one for Tasmanians, even in our friendship circle. Like you'd go to Melbourne or Sydney, and you'd come back, and the first thing you get is like, "Oh, you couldn't hack it, mate." It's like, but even that's gone now as well.
It's definitely, it's amazing. Like I've been and gone, I've lived overseas, I've lived in Western Australia, in Victoria, but coming home is amazing, and Tassie seems to be thriving at the moment. It's like Dark Mofo coming up. I've been speaking to so many people about how exciting that will be. Buying down here has been amazing.
There's a lot to like. That's
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure.
No, we're
Yeah.
a lucky bunch.
Well, I think that, but in art imitating life, yeah, it's all true. I'm completely incompetent in what I do. Not really. How that
Listen to our podcast. We're incompetent.
how that came about was Luke and Celia are best mates in real life,
Yep.
and Celia comes from a small town. Luke comes from a real estate agency, so they'd pitched a lot of different ideas to the ABC, and none of them sort of went anywhere. So they had one idea left that they pitched to the producer. I can't quite remember, and apparently that the lady had said, "Look, this is the first time she's ever pitched a show, and she could see it clearly 100%."
Yep.
And so there was another idea that I thought would have been funny, and I think this is true, is that if you had a one-service town, like you only had one butcher, one locksmith, one real estate agent, one doctor, like you did not have any option but to use their services. So there's a lot of humour that can be drawn out of that, no matter how
definitely.
bad or they are, or the relationships you generate, you still have to use those people. And so from that, I think that was the genesis of the idea that came with Rosehaven. Then bringing it back to Tassie, well, that was one of the great picturesque locations that they could use. And I think with the proof was in the pudding, because some of the set locations they've done has been absolutely phenomenal. But I think if they ever do a new season, they're not going to be filming it in winter again, because apparently it's just
Too cold.
miserable on the stuff.
So is it Luke's fault that we have a housing crisis here now? Because
100.
everyone's seen it and now they just want to come back.
100%.
You heard it here first. Luke McGregor, you brought on the housing crisis. All right, guys, I think for episode 1, we've beaten out those jitters. We've worked our way to about 30 minutes, and we should probably sign off the property pod. I had a really good time talking to you guys, and yeah, I hope we can do lots more of these. Thanks for introducing yourselves and discussing the federal election that's coming up. We're going to try and do these weekly. We're going to work our way up and just kind of chat, see what happens.
I will give you guys a hats off and a thank you as well, because if we remember, I bought my podcast mic over 12 months ago. Nothing's happened with it, but the setup that you guys have created is pretty darn impressive, and I think you nearly burnt down the building in the process, didn't you?
No. That's what the fire alarm was.
I was thinking when you were discussing your electric drum kit before, you were like, oh yeah, I've been thinking about it for about a year now. I'm like, oh, John's like almost at the point where he'll actually buy it, and then it'll sit there for a year. Then in a year, he'll use it after that.
Well, the problem is too, is that now I was about to buy it, then we started house renovation, so now I've literally got zero space to do it. Now, so that's another
You
excuse.
should have made a drum studio, mate.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so that's the end of Property Pod number 1. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All the best.
You have been listening to The Property Pod, produced and edited by 414 Media House in conjunction with 414 Real Estate and McGregor First National Propriety Limited.
This podcast is general information only, and the thoughts and views expressed is the opinion of our panel, and listeners should always seek and use their own investigation into any topic we discuss to ensure they fully understand their own situation.
It does not constitute and should not be relied on as purchasing, selling, financial or investment advice or recommendations, express or implied, and it should not be used as an invitation to take up any agent or investment services.